Story 1. Curse of the Shipwreck. In the small fishing village of Old Harbor, life always revolved around the sea. The local families depended on it to sustain their lives and businesses. Among all the fishermen, Joseph was the most experienced and respected. He had learned the trade from his father and grandfather before him, and his tales of adventures and dangers at sea fascinated the young people of the village. Among them was Michael, a young fisherman seeking adventures and knowledge. One morning, Joseph and Michael decided to explore a new fishing area, seldom visited by other fishermen. It was a dangerous region shrouded in mystery, known as Shipwreck Bay. Rumor had it that the remains of an ancient shipwreck lay there, carrying with it treasures and secret. "Are you sure you want to go there, Joseph?" Michael asked while preparing the fishing gear. "Yes, I am, boy," Joseph replied, adjusting the sails of the boat. "I've heard the fish are plentiful in that area. Besides, we need to face our fears and explore new territories." Michael nodded, still a bit apprehensive. They set out at dawn, with the sun rising on the horizon and the sea calm before them. The trip was peaceful until they reached Shipwreck Bay. The atmosphere changed, and a thick fog began to form around them. "This is it," said Joseph, looking around. "Let's anchor and start fishing." As they cast their nets, they began to notice strange phenomena. Whispering voices seemed to echo through the fog, and shadows moved in the depths of the sea. Michael felt a chill run down his spine, tried to ignore it, focusing on his work. Suddenly, something heavy got caught in the net. Joseph and Michael pulled with all their might, and what emerged was part of the shipwrecked hull, covered in algae and corals. Alongside the hull, they found a wooden chest, corroded by time and salt water. "My God, look at this," exclaimed Michael, carefully opening the chest. Inside they found old valuables, gold coins, jewelry, and a logbook. Joseph picked up the logbook and began flipping through the yellowed pages. "This must be the captain's logbook," he said, reading the notes. "It talks about a curse that befell the crew." Michael looked at Joseph, apprehensive. "Curse? What kind of curse?" According to the logbook, the captain and his crew were cursed for plundering a sacred temple on a distant island. Curse condemned them to wander the sea eternally without rest. As Joseph read, the fog around them thickened, and the boat began to rock violently. Desperate voices and screams of agony filled the air. Joseph and Michael looked around, terrified, and saw spectral figures emerging from the fog. They were the spirits of the cursed sailors. "You have disturbed our rest," shouted one of the figures, advancing on them. "You will pay for this." Joseph and Michael tried to back away, but the boat was surrounded by the furious spirits. The spirit of the captain appeared before them, his presence imposing and threatening. "You disturb our eternal sleep and now face our wrath," roared the captain. "Please let us explain," shouted Joseph, holding up the logbook. "We found your logbook and treasures by chance. We didn't know about the curse." The captain hesitated, his spectral eyes fixed on the logbook. "You have the logbook?" he asked, his voice echoing like thunder. "Yes, we have it," replied Joseph, extending the logbook. "We want to help you find peace. What can we do?" The captain seemed to ponder for a moment, then spoke in a softer tone. "To break the curse, you must return the treasures to the sacred temple from where they were stolen. Only then will we find rest." Joseph and Michael nodded. "We will do it," said Joseph, determined. "We'll return the treasures and break the curse." The spirits withdrew, and the fog began to dissipate. The captain looked at Joseph and Michael with gratitude. "Go now, and fulfill your promise. Our peace depends on you." With those words, the spirits disappeared, and the sea became calm again. Joseph and Michael quickly gathered the treasures and set sail back to the village, determined to keep their promise. Back in Old Harbor, they shared their story with the village elders, who were both impressed and concerned. The elders remembered the old tales about the sacred island and agreed to help Joseph and Michael organize an expedition to return the treasures. The journey to the island was long and perilous. They faced violent storms and treacherous seas. Finally reached the sacred island mentioned in the logbook. It was a mystical place with an ancient temple hidden in the heart of the jungle. Guided by the logbook, Joseph and Michael entered the temple and found the altar where the treasures had been stolen. They placed the items back on the altar and recited the words from the logbook. asking for forgiveness and peace for the spirits. As they completed the ritual, they felt a calming presence around them. The spirits of the sailors appeared once more, but this time they were at peace. The captain smiled at Joseph and Michael. "You have kept your promise. Now we can rest in peace. Thank you." With those words, the spirits vanished, leaving a sense of tranquility and relief. Joseph and Michael returned to the boat, feeling renewed and grateful for having helped break the curse. Back in Old Harbor, they were received as heroes. The story of their adventure and courage quickly spread, becoming a legend among the fishermen. Joseph continued to fish, but with a newfound appreciation for the sea and its mysteries. Inspired by the experience, Michael decided to follow in Joseph's footsteps and became a respected fisherman in the village. Story 2. The monster of the lake. Anna was a dedicated marine biologist known for her passion for the mysteries of the waters. Along with her brother Peter, an amateur fisherman, she decided to spend a few days at an isolated lake surrounded by dense forests, searching for new aquatic species, perhaps intriguing stories to tell. Black Lake, as it was called, was famous for its calm, deep waters, but also for its mysterious legend. The trip to the lake began on a sunny morning. Anna and Peter arrived in an old pickup truck, bringing all the necessary equipment to camp and conduct their research. The location was remote and practically untouched, which only heightened Anna's excitement. "This place is incredible," said Anna, observing the landscape around them. "There are so many possibilities to discover new things here." Peter, more pragmatic, was more interested in fishing. "I hope the fish are plentiful. I've heard many stories about this lake." As they set up camp by the lake, a local fisherman, an elderly man named Mr. Ernest, approached. He observed Anna and Peter with curiosity, but also with a concerned expression. "You folks are new around here," he said in a raspy voice. "What brings you to this place?" "We're here to fish and do some research," Anna replied, smiling. "Have you heard anything interesting about this lake?" Ernest hesitated before answering. "There are many stories about Black Lake. Some people say a monster inhabits these waters. Many fishermen and explorers have disappeared here over the years." Peter laughed, but Anna was intrigued. "A monster? What kind of monster?" "An ancient creature," said Ernest, lowering his voice. "Something huge and fierce. Some say it's a giant serpent. Others speak of a creature with glowing eyes and sharp teeth. Whatever it is, it's not something to be trifled with." Anna thanked Mr. Ernest for the warning, but was more curious than scared. Peter, on the other hand, seemed skeptical, though a bit less confident. "Well, if there is a monster, I just hope it doesn't like fishermen," he said with a nervous smile. That night, after setting up camp, Anna and Peter decided to do some fishing before it got dark. The calmness of the lake was almost surreal, and the surface reflected the starry sky like a mirror. They cast their lines and waited patiently. After a few hours, Peter reeled in a big, beautiful fish. "This will be our dinner," he said, satisfied. Anna was about to pull in her line when she noticed something strange. The water around the boat began to ripple gently, as if something large was moving beneath the surface. "Peter, did you see that?" Anna asked, a note of alert in her voice. Peter looked at the water, frowning. "What is it?" "Something is moving down there," said Anna, keeping her eyes fixed on the ripples. "Something big." Suddenly, a massive shadow passed under the boat, causing it to rock violently. Anna and Peter nearly fell into the water. Peter tried to keep his balance. The sight of a gigantic creature emerging from the depths was enough to drain the color from his face. The creature was monstrous, with dark, glistening scales, eyes that shone like headlights, and sharp teeth reflected the moonlight. It growled and lunged at the boat, trying to capsize it. "Row!" shouted Anna, grabbing the oars and frantically paddling. Peter did the same, and together they fought against the current and the creature's force. The monster continued to chase them, growing more aggressive. The boat creaked and groaned under the impact of the attacks. Anna and Peter rowed with all their might, trying to reach the shore. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they managed to reach the beach and jumped out of the boat. The creature hesitated at the water's edge, watching them with its glowing eyes before disappearing into the depths of the lake. Panting and in shock, Anna and Peter looked at each other. "Was that real?" Peter asked, still trying to catch his breath. "It was," Anna replied, her voice trembling. "We need to understand what that thing is." The next day, despite the trauma, Anna was determined to learn more about the creature. They spoke again with Mr. Ernest, who provided more details about the lake's legends. He mentioned old manuscripts kept in the village's small library, which spoke of an entity protecting the lake and attacking anyone who disturbed its peace. Anna and Peter went to the library and spent hours researching. They found references to a giant serpent revered by the region's ancient inhabitants as a sacred guardian of the lake. Those who disrespected the sacred waters faced its wrath. "We have to figure out how to deal with this," but Anna determined. There must be a way to appease the creature. Peter was not so sure. And if there isn't, what if the only solution is to leave the lake? Anna didn't want to give up. If it's a protective entity, there must be a way to show that we're not a threat. That night, they returned to the lake, this time bringing offerings and following the rituals described in the old manuscript. They placed flowers and food in the water, reciting ancient prayers in an effort to appease the creature. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the lake's surface began to glow softly. The creature emerged again, but this time its approach was less aggressive. It observed Anna and Peter with its glowing eyes as if assessing their intention. Richard shrugged. "I don't know, but all the fishermen here have their stories. Some say they're the spirits of lost sailors. Others believe they're signs of something buried in the depths of the sea." When night fell completely, they began to see the first lights. They were small and bright, floating over the water and moving erratically. Sophie watched intently, feeling a mix of fascination and apprehension. "Look, there," Richard said, pointing to a light that was approaching the shore. "Coming this way." The light moved slowly towards the beach, illuminating the water around it with an ethereal glow. When it was a few meters from where they were, it began to flicker and dance in the air. Sophie took out her camera and started filming. "This is incredible. I've never seen anything like it." Suddenly, the light exploded into a blinding flash, and Richard and Sophie felt a chill run through their bodies. When the light dimmed, they saw a nebulous figure emerging from the water. It was a man dressed in old sailor's clothes, with an expression of despair on his face. "Do you see that?" Sophie asked, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Yes," Richard replied, trying to stay calm. "This is new." The figure of the sailor raised a hand as if trying to communicate. "Help me," he said, his voice a distant echo. "We are lost." Sophie stepped forward, trying to understand. "Who are you? What happened to you?" "The shipwreck," replied the spirit. "Our ship sank. Our souls are trapped here, unable to find rest." Richard and Sophie exchanged looks. "How can we help you?" Richard asked, feeling the urgency in the spirit's voice. "You need to find our remains and give us a proper burial," said the sailor. "Only then will we find peace." With this message, the figure of the sailor began to fade, and the lights over the water slowly went out. Richard and Sophie stood in silence for a moment, trying to process what they had just witnessed. "Was that real?" Sophie asked, still in shock. "It was," Richard replied firmly. "We need to do what he asked." In the following days, Richard and Sophie began investigating the shipwreck mentioned by the spirit. They visited local archives, spoke with older fishermen, and searched for any clues that could lead them to the ship's remains. They discovered that over 100 years ago, a merchant ship had wrecked near Lighthouse Beach during a violent storm. Most of the crew perished, and their bodies were never recovered. It was believed that the ship's wreckage lay buried in the depths of the sea, not far from the coast. They decided to organize a diving expedition to search for the ship's remains. With the help of some local divers and diving equipment, they set out in search of the wreck site. After hours of diving and exploration, they finally found the shipwreck, covered in corals and sediments. There were skeletons scattered among the wreckage, still wearing the remnants of their sailor uniforms. Richard and Sophie, with the help of the divers, recovered the remains and brought them back to the beach. They decided to hold a proper funeral, with the presence of local residents and some fishermen who knew the stories. During the ceremony, they placed the remains in a shallow grave on the beach and recited prayers, asking that the souls of the sailors finally find peace. When they finished, a soft light began to shine over the water, and they saw the figures of the sailors emerging, but this time they were smiling. "Thank you," said the sailor they had seen on the first night. "Now we can rest." With those words, the figures slowly disappeared, and the light dissipated, leaving a sense of peace and tranquility on the beach. Richard and Sophie felt a sense of relief and accomplishment. They had helped solve an ancient mystery and bring peace to lost souls. The story of the lights of Lighthouse Beach and the lost sailors became a legend among the fishermen and local residents, a reminder of the power of compassion and respect for the unknown. In the following days, Sophie wrote a detailed article about the experience, which was widely read and praised. Richard continued his life as a fisherman, but now with a new appreciation for the mysteries of the sea.